Safety first, mother truckers. Hello everyone and welcome to part 3 of this arcade building series here on Signal Ridge. By the end of this video, if I survive, because we're in the middle of summer in the great state of Texas, it's really hot in case you can't tell, you should have the main shell of your arcade cabinet completed. The finer details such as T-molding, paint application, the marquee, the arcade control panel, and anything else I forgot to mention just now will be covered in part 4. As you can see, I've got a sheet of MDF in my truck as well as one on my sawhorses. I also have my slats of pine wood molding. Hopefully you have those materials as well as the tools I specified in my previous video. The first task is creating a side panel. It can be whatever shape you desire. And the reason for that is you can trace your other side panel from that original cut. I prefer my cabinets to be around 6 feet tall and about 24 inches wide within the cabinet. So that's basically what we're gonna aim for. If you want to add T-molding, which, maybe I don't recommend for your first build, but if you want it to look as professional as possible and you want the T-molding, you're going to have to round the edges of your cabinet. The easiest thing to do is to grab a compass or something as simple as a cereal bowl and basically lay that over your outline, or within your outline rather, and then you can kind of round off the edges. Unfortunately, there were a couple of items that I failed to mention in my last video, which covered tools and materials. And those two things are a triangular straight edge, or whatever the hell this thing is, and something like this, a rather lengthy level. I don't recommend you go out and purchase them, but if there is somebody that you know that you're borrowing tools from anyway, they probably have those things lying around. I ain't even lying. It's so hot outside that my iPhone shut down because the temperature exceeded, 110 degrees or something. Okay, so I've cut out both side panels, and essentially what I've done is I've stacked them on top of one another. And the reason for this is I'm looking for any discrepancies, as I said before. So I'm looking for where the edges don't match up. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take an electric sander and I'm going to go around those edges that don't match up to make it as flush as possible. You don't necessarily have to do this because you're going to be using T-molding, but some of those edges might be really rough. So it's just something that I like to do, so I'll leave that choice up to you guys. What you will want to do, however, is you'll want to make sure that the sandpaper you're using is very coarse. Otherwise it's going to take you forever to sand down those edges. Afterwards, what we're going to do is we're going to route the edges for T-molding, if we want to use T-molding. So again, I leave that choice up to you. If you don't have a router, then obviously you're not going to use T-molding. You could do what I did with my first cabinet, which was just paint the edges black or whatever color you want. Not a whole lot of people are going to pay attention to a detail like that anyway. I forgot to mention that you're going to want to use your clamps to make sure that the wood doesn't shift too much. So the more clamps you use, the better, I guess the more stable it will be and the less it'll shift. Okay, so quick piece of advice about the router. What you're going to want to do is you're going to want to adjust it so that the depth or the height of the router hits 3/8, because that's exactly where the blade needs to be in order to be in the middle section of your 3/4 inch MDF. So make sure you do that. You'll have to have 2 wrenches, and essentially what you'll do is you'll turn them opposite of one another in order to to tighten the bolt and fix the router bit in that location. I should also state that the router is, in my opinion, the most dangerous tool that you're going to use today. So you just want to be very careful in whatever direction the blade is cutting. You want to make sure that you're going with the blade. Otherwise, the router could kind of run off without your guidance, and it could be very dangerous. If it's possible to have someone help you with this, especially someone who has experience with a router, then please do so. You don't want to be in the video?
I do.
Watch out, don't step on the tools. You guys remember Ethan, right? You miss being on the channel?
Yeah.
We need to do another video soon, probably. All right, Daddy's got to finish working. So what we're going to do now is I've got the other sheet of MDF on here on my sawhorses, and I'm going to cut out basically the back panel, and I need to cut out the coin door. So both of which are going to have a cutout space for access to the back of the arcade, and the coin door for an actual door that will be used to get to the computer that we're going to have. Now what we're going to want these pieces to be is at least 24 inches, because that's going to be the width of the inside of the cabinet. So that's very important because it's just going to work well with the TV that we're using and everything else. What you have to do for this is you have to actually measure the back of your arcade, and basically you want it to end right where that curve begins. So in this case, it's 57 inches. For the cutouts, it doesn't really matter where they are, but I like to have two cutouts. Number one, because it reduces the weight, and number two, because I would need access to the back of the TV or monitor, but I also need access to in some cases, like where I put the subwoofer on the bottom of the cabinet. So. I'm sharpening my pencil. Basically what I'm going to be doing now is I'm going to go ahead and mark where I'm cutting out the access holes, and then I'm going to take a spade bit and go down through the wood, and that gives me access with my jigsaw, and then my jigsaw can route out the rest of the panel basically. So here goes nothing. Sometimes you got to kind of rock it back and forth. What you want to make sure is that when you're kind of cutting is that you kind of use your eyesight to line up where the actual spade bit is going to drill into the hole, and I'll show you what I mean here in a second. grab this, flip this camera around. You can see, here's the wood. You see where I drew my lines. I messed up. But you can see there. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna run the jigsaw. Wow, my brain doesn't work today. I'm gonna run it like this, and then run it this way. So that'll give it a nice rounded edge there. So I cut one of the access points out. If you want to, you can go back with, you know, an electric sander with coarse grit sandpaper, and you can sand down the edges if you want. But nobody's going to see the back of the cabinet, so to me, it's pointless. So we're not going to do that. It looks rough. Who cares? It doesn't matter. It's just to gain access to the back of the arcade cabinet, and that's it. So I'm going to cut out the other panel, and then, or the access point, and then I'm going to cut out the entire panel for the back. And then we can go ahead, cut out the frame for the bottom, and start to assemble the cabinet. So there you have it. The cuts aren't pretty. As you can see, the edges are kind of messy, but it doesn't matter. No one's gonna see this part of the cabinet. It's just basically to gain access to the back of your arcade, and that's pretty much it. So, and to provide, of course, support. So, because you're gonna anchor the side panels into this edge and the edge over here. Okay, so I lied. I'm gonna go ahead, and this is what's left of what the MDF sheet that I cut the back panel out of, which is right here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and cut this out. This will be the side that has the coin door. I'm not going to cut the coin door out just yet because I'm losing daylight, and I want to at least assemble the cab partially so I can show you guys before I lose, you know, any shooting time. And this, I think this is, yeah, 7 inches here. So I will be able to use this for some part of the cab. I don't know, maybe the lip or something, but we'll see how it goes. I'm tired of standing up. So I know I said I was going to not cut out the coin door because I don't have time, and the sun has now gone down. But ultimately, I decided that I'm going to go ahead and cut out the hole, the access hole for the coin door. The coin door itself is going to be a separate piece that I put on top of the panel. So we'll get into that when we get to the finishing touches. But I am going to go ahead and use the spade bit just like I did for the back panel, and I'm going to cut out the holes I need to get the jigsaw in there. So. My battery's low, it's about to die. I do recommend once, I know I said don't worry about sanding down the insides of the cuts for the back panel. You may want to sand down the insides of this part. You won't see it necessarily unless you open the coin door, which you will do at least once when you're playing your arcade to power everything on. So just kind of, you know, or for other reasons. So you might want to sand it down. I'm going to go ahead. I like to sand down the inside of my coin doors. So, all right guys, so it's a new day here because obviously I ran out of daylight yesterday. I just got a late start on the build to begin with. So, and plus it was hot. My phone shut down several times while recording, which is unfortunate because I'm going to have to, you know, rework everything editing wise. But basically where we're at right now is I cut out the coin door access hole, so in the front panel. So that's done. The back panel's already done. I did that before. So essentially what we're doing now is we are going to frame the bottom of the cabinet. In other words, we're going to take those slats that I described in the video, those 1x6s, 1x8s, whatever you got, and we're going to cut them down so we have a cabinet that is 24 inches in width on the inside and about 19 or so inches depth wise. So I'm about to do that right now. So this is where the little straight edge doohickey comes in handy. This is going to be the width of the inside of the cabinet. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the 19-inch boards here on the side and then put screws like that into the side of this panel here. And there you have it. We got all of our pieces of wood cut for the base. Now I'm going to join them together with some MDF hardwood screws. And as you can tell, I did not wear my safety glasses. So don't do that because some of the pieces of wood coming off of that saw are very sharp. I just was being stupid, so don't do that. What you want to do is you want to make sure that you actually go into the wood. You don't want it to kind of stick out because the MDF is going to sit on top of this. And likewise, you'll want to do that with the MDF as well because we're actually going to fill those screw holes with drywall spackling anyway, so we can give the cabinet a nice smooth finish. Alright, so there you have it, guys. That is the base of our arcade. So this was a this is 1x8. So I know I said you guys can get 1x6 or even maybe 1x4 or 3/4 inch by 4, whatever. It still works. So the main thing is it's just going to provide it's going to give us guidance on assembling the cabinet, the base of the cabinet, the shell, I guess you'd say. So we're going to go ahead, we're going to take this and we're going to place it on top of the back panel, and that back panel will basically sit at 24 inches, and then we're going to go from there. As you can see, I've got a piece of plywood that I put underneath my sawhorses. If you don't have piece of plywood or something like that to put underneath the sawhorses, you should have a whole section of MDF left to use. The reason for this is I'm going to use that as like a base, a floor, so that I can put the back panel on the side and then line up the frame that I created. You'll see just what I mean here in a second. So what I've done is I've made sure that the bottom and the sides are flush with the back panel, and I'm just going to take my MDF hardwood screws and I'm going to go straight through the MDF into that frame. Now, if you missed any sort of damage to the MDF when you purchased it, I told you to look out for like the fuzziness or the parts that look swollen. If, let's say, there was a spot you missed, what you want to do is, if you already cut out your arcade panel, it's probably something small. What you can do is you can make sure that cut, wherever that blemish is on the MDF, you can make sure that panel, that side of the panel is on the inside. So for example, I do have a blemish here on this panel right there. I don't know if you can't see that right there where it's split. I don't know if that was after I purchased it when I was getting it out of my truck. It's not that big a deal. I could also, like, use drywall spackling to, like, sand it down and smooth it out. But what I'm going to do instead is I'm going to make sure that this side where this blemish is, I'm going to make sure that is the inside of the arcade, the inside back. So not a big deal, quick fix, just to give you guys an idea on how you can get around that. All right, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and put the side panel on. Okay, now that I've gone ahead and you can see I've got both my side panels anchored into the bottom frame, and of course the back panel anchored into the bottom frame. What I can do now is along the back side of the side panel, I can anchor that into the back panel right there at the bottom. So that's what I'm gonna do. I'll probably do about 6 or so screws all the way up, just to make sure that it's anchored nicely in there. It's important to note that you only have 3/4 of an inch from the bottom of the side panel right there to where the back panel ends. So just be conscious of that, don't go too far up, but I'll show you how to rectify that in case something goes wrong. I charged my battery a little bit and I finished anchoring the side panel into the back panel, so that's completed. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the coin door, which I did already cut out the center of, and I'm going to place that onto the base in between the two side panels. And I just want to mention that where you place your coin door, where you cut out the hole, that's completely up to you. I like mine to ride a little bit high, just because that's kind of what the old arcades used to look like. But you can put it right in the middle, towards whatever works for you, then go for it.
Okay, I ran into a little bit of a hiccup. I don't know if you can see there, but the edge of this sticks out too much, so it's not completely flush. We tried to push it in as much as possible, like on that side, make sure it's flush. So I'm going to sand this down, and I'm going to make sure that the height on both of these sides is going to be the same. I'm not sure what went wrong there, but something simple, easy to rectify. So I'm just going to take my electric sander, and I'm going to go down and just kind of shave this down.
Don't be stupid. Make sure you wear your mask and your safety glasses. Okay, I don't know if you guys can tell, but there's the cabinet, and you know, we're pretty much, we've got the most of the shell completed. There's just a couple things before we get to our stopping point. My battery's charged, so that's good. I was waiting on that. I'm going to use a circular saw because it cuts quicker than the jigsaw, but you can do this with a jigsaw. For that top angled panel, what makes that panel different than the rest is that it requires a 45-degree angle cut. So if you have your jigsaw or your circular saw, I'm about to show you how to adjust the blades so that they cut at that 45-degree angle. So here's an old jigsaw that I have that actually the motor burned out on. I got to get it fixed or something. But I do have that Black & Decker. So I just want to show you different ways that these adjust. Most of them have a little latch, right? And it comes undone. Your jigsaws, you slide this up and then you just turn it. Okay, and so if you look, it's going to cut at about a 45-degree angle that way, right? Now my Black & Decker is a bit different. Same concept really, but you can see here there are two screws, and you can take a Phillips or a flathead and you unscrew that, you slide this up, and then you angle it, slide it back down, and then you tighten it with the screwdriver. So a little bit different, but very similar. Now, with a circular saw, there's usually an adjustment setting here. So you loosen that and you tilt until you get to that. Now make sure it says 45 degrees. There's sawdust in there so you can't see it. Right, so that's at a 50 degree. We don't want a 50 degree angle. We want a 45 degree angle. And you want to tighten that all the way. You also want to make sure that your jigsaws, you can see where it says 45 degrees. So you don't want to go past that because, you know, basically that angle that I have on my cabinet, that is 45 degrees. I guess it depends on what yours is set at. So yeah, so there we go, it's set. So I determined that top panel is going to be 19 inches, okay, from the outside. So on the inside, right, there's going to be a cut here, so I've got to make an inside cut. So I'm going to show you basically how that works. By the way, I should quickly mention, I know you guys saw me like throwing scraps of wood as I cut them down onto the pavement. Probably not wise because you're going to actually use those scraps. So MDF is pretty resilient and mine wasn't damaged, but you know, if you like it landed on a corner, obviously it's going to, you know, split and fray the wood, the MDF. So don't do that because again, you will use all of those scraps in one way or another, and you will still have wood left over, and that's good because, you know, if you make a mistake or something, or you decide you want to build another cabinet down the road, which is what happened to me, then you know you want those scraps laying around. So this is one of the scraps that we've got left. Very funky looking. Now the width of it down here versus up here is different because this is the bottom half panel of the arcade. And if you remember, look at the arcade, it kind of gets narrower right there. It kind of pinches right there before the lip. So basically what I'm doing is I've determined that this is 24 inches. I'm using the straight edge to make a straight line. And what I'm gonna do is, I've also measured here, that's 24 inches from that side. So I'm gonna use the leveler to mark that out, and I'm gonna cut with my jigsaw or my circular saw to make sure that it's 24 inches all the way through. And then I can start to measure, okay, 19 inches this way, and then make my inside cut. I should also mention that your guide for where to cut at the 45-degree angle, it's going to be marked differently on the surface. So if you can see here, I don't know if you can see that, but that's where I need to line up my lines in order to cut at a 45-degree angle. Same thing with the jigsaw. There should be, you know, some guided lines to show you where you need to go. So you got to be careful not to bend the blade when you're going through. That's a common habit of a lot of people because they think it's not straight. But it's going to be one of those marks on the outside depending on where you're cutting. So as you can see here, I was off the mark despite following the guide on the circular saw. Sometimes that happens. I don't know, maybe I'd need to manually recalibrate it somehow. I've never done that before, but something's definitely amiss. So basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to measure from here to the outside, or the other end. I'm going to measure 19 inches and I'm going to cut that way, so that way it's even. And then after that, then I'll cut this at 24 inches. Unfortunately, my phone died and I did not get to record screwing in the top panel, but essentially I've done it. It's completed. So you just want to make sure that the width or the depth is the same here as it is up here. I just kind of eyeballed it. I've been doing this long enough. I also encourage that, and do the same for the other side obviously, I also encourage that you use a tape measure, measure the inside, okay? Where does that piece of MDF start? And then you can just take the level, measure the same distance, and just draw a straight line so you know that the screws have to be beyond that point. Kind of similar to what we were talking about. You can see my camera because it's so bright out here. Over here on this part of the arcade cabinet. See there, the jigsaw was getting so hot that it was melting the epoxy that binds the MDF. Don't worry, it shouldn't catch fire, but yeah, it did burn it a little bit. It doesn't matter, because, you know. But the one thing I don't like about the jigsaw, it's a lot harder to control at a 45-degree angle. I don't know if you can see this. That's pretty spot on. And then you get to here where I had to use the jigsaw because the battery died and the saw blade was getting pinched by the weight. You can see here that is off the mark. That's not a 45-degree angle like the other side. So I'm gonna have to rectify that with the electric sander. Is, you know, just do it by eye and get it as close as I can. Any cracks or anything I can seal with caulk or, you know, wood filler, Bondo wood filler, whatever I gotta do. So that's what I'm gonna do. Just goes to show you, you know, things are gonna happen. Mistakes will be made. Don't get discouraged by it. It's gonna be okay. You know, just use a little bit of common sense and a little bit of ingenuity, and you can fix almost any problem that arises. I've been able to fix every problem that arose in one way or another. So just, you know, have confidence in yourself and your abilities, and you'll pull through. So I got too far ahead of myself and I accidentally installed the top panel without doing the slot for the T-molding with the router. So I've got to take that panel back out. Here it is right here. I'm gonna take that back out and then cut the slot and then put it back in. The reason why I can't do it now is because this lip right here of this side panel, it won't allow me to cut the use the router. So I'm gonna take that back out, cut the slot for the T-molding, and then put it back in. I don't know if you can tell, but basically what I've done is I've anchored that top panel with those clamps to another heavier piece of wood, because taking the router over it, the weight of the router is going to push it down. So just, to be cautious, I guess, I went ahead and did that. So hopefully it'll stay put. Side note, you don't want to bank your safety on a hopefully, right? So maybe I'm not being smart about this. I've done this before. It should stay put. Okay, so basically what happened there, and I'll show you, because I forgot to do the T-molding first. Basically what happened is this screw up here is a little too far forward, and basically, I don't know if you can see, but that screw is just beyond this slot that was cut by the router. So that may be an issue when I'm putting the T-molding in. But basically what I can do is I can cut a little bit off of the T-molding grip to make sure that it still fits snug in there. And if it's still giving me problems, I can use some epoxy. So like JB Weld or whatever, just some 5-minute epoxy and set that in there. And then it also, I don't know if you can tell right there, there's a little bit too much room between these two pieces, but that's fine, because I can use, again, the T-molding is going to cover it up anyway, but I can use some caulk on the top and the bottom, so should be fine. But that's it. I'm going to leave it at this. It's getting late in the day. It's hot. State of Texas, man. I've been working on this for 2 days now. I got a late start yesterday, so otherwise this probably would have been, a day, and I would be at this point easy. So, but it is what it is. When we return, we're going to talk about the control panel as well as the lip panel that's going to have I'm going to have a button there to back out of games, like a reset button if you will. We're going to do the panel that's in the back that the TV mounts on. We're going to do a shelf, and as well as everything else. So we're going to talk paint. I'm going to give you suggestions on that, and we're going to talk the T-molding. We'll talk the light up marquee, everything. So look forward to it on the channel, and I'll catch you guys next time.